The wind howled like a banshee through the Colorado mountain pass, carrying with it the kind of snow that transforms highways into death traps and turns seasoned travelers into frightened children. Eleanor Whitman pressed her weathered face against the frosted window of her small cabin, watching the world disappear beneath a blanket of white fury. At 73, she'd weathered many storms in these mountains, but this one felt different, angrier, hungrier, like it wanted to swallow everything whole. The rumble reached her ears before she saw Thema, a deep, mechanical growling that cut through the storm's shriek. Through the swirling snow, 15 dark shapes materialized on the mountain road, their headlights cutting desperate beams through the chaos. Motorcycles. In the blizzard, Eleanor's heart clenched as she watched the bikers struggle against nature's assault, their leather jackets no match for the sub-zero temperatures that could freeze a person solid in minutes. Without hesitation, Eleanor grabbed her heaviest coat and stepped into the storm. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet, but she pressed forward, waving her arms wildly at the approaching bikers. The lead rider, a massive man with a salt and pepper beard visible beneath his helmet, spotted her and signaled to the others. One by one, they turned their bikes toward her small cabin, their machines coughing and sputtering in the bitter cold. "Thank God," the lead biker shouted over the wind as he pulled off his helmet, revealing kind eyes set in a face carved by years of road and weather. "I'm Marcus. We're the Thunder Mountain Riders, heading back from a charity run in Denver. This storm came out of nowhere." Eleanor didn't hesitate. "I'm Eleanor. Get those bikes under the carport and get yourselves inside before you freeze to death." She studied the group of men and women ranging from their 20s to their 60s, all shivering uncontrollably, their faces blue with cold. Some wore patches indicating they were veterans, others had club insignia she didn't recognize, but all wore the same expression of desperate gratitude. Inside her modest cabin, Eleanor became a whirlwind of activity. She pulled every blanket she owned from closets and cedar chests, started a fire in the stone fireplace, and put on the largest pot of coffee she had. The bikers huddled together, their leather creaking as feeling slowly returned to their limbs. "Mom, we don't want to impose," said a woman named Rosa, her voice still chattering. "We can pay you for the trouble." Eleanor waved dismissively. "Nonsense. Your guests in my home." She bustled to her kitchen, pulling out cans of soup, packages of bread, and everything else she could find. "I may not have much, but I've got enough to share." As the evening wore on, something magical happened. The rough-looking bikers revealed themselves to be teachers, mechanics, nurses, small business owners, regular people who happened to love the freedom of the open road. Marcus was a retired Marine who organized rides to raise money for wounded veterans. Rosa ran a motorcycle training program for women. A quiet man named Jake, covered in intimidating tattoos, turned out to be a children's librarian who reads stories with different voices for each character. Eleanor found herself laughing harder than she had in years as Jake performed an impromptu reading of The Three Little Pigs, complete with motorcycle sound effects for the huffing and puffing. The bikers shared stories of their adventures, their families, their dreams. They helped her prepare dinner, insisted on doing the dishes, and treated her small cabin with the reverence of a cathedral. "Why did you stop for us?" Marcus asked as they sat around the fire later that night. "Most people see us coming and cross to the other side of the street." Eleanor looked around at the faces illuminated by firelight, faces that had seemed threatening hours ago but now looked like family. "My late husband was a biker," she said quietly. "He died in Vietnam, but before he left, he used to take me on rides through these very mountains. He always said bikers were just regular folks who understood that life's too short to stay in one place." The room fell silent except for the crackling fire. Several of the bikers wiped their eyes, and Rosa reached over to squeeze Eleanor's hand. As the night deepened, they shared sleeping bags, blankets, and floor space. Eleanor gave up her bedroom to the women while the men camped out in the living room. The storm raged on, but inside the cabin, warmth and friendship bloomed like spring flowers. Eleanor woke before dawn, as was her habit, and quietly started breakfast. Through her kitchen window, she could see that the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by pristine snow that sparkled like diamonds in the early morning light. The bikers would be able to leave soon, and the thought filled her with unexpected sadness. In one night, these strangers had brought more joy to her home than she'd experienced in the 2 years since her sister had passed, leaving her truly alone. As she flipped pancakes, Eleanor heard the distant rumble of engines. More motorcycles were coming up the mountain road. She frowned, wondering if another group had been caught by the storm's aftermath. The sound grew louder, multiplying, until it became a thunderous symphony that shook her windows. "Eleanor," Marcus called from the living room, his voice filled with amazement. "You need to come see this." She stepped outside and gasped. The road in front of her cabin was lined with motorcycles, dozens of them, stretching as far as she could see. Bikers of all ages stood beside their machines, some holding flowers, others carrying bags of groceries. Many with envelopes in their hands. A banner stretched between two bikes read "Thank you, Eleanor" in bold red letters. Marcus stepped beside her, grinning widely. Word travels fast in the biker community. We put the story on social media last night when we got cell service back. This is what happens when you show kindness to people who aren't used to receiving it. One by one, the bikers approached. They brought gifts: homemade cookies, hand-knitted scarves, gift cards to grocery stores, even a new winter coat. But more than the gifts, they brought stories. Stories of Eleanor's guests from the night before, who had painted a picture of a woman who opened her heart and home to strangers without a second thought. "My dad was in Vietnam too," said one young man, pressing an envelope into her hands. "He died last year, but he would have loved to know there are still people like you in the world." An older woman on a pristine Harley-Davidson stepped forward. "I'm a doctor from Denver. These boys told me about your kindness, and I wanted to meet the woman who still believes in the goodness of strangers." The parade continued for hours. Bikers from across Colorado, Wyoming, and beyond had ridden through the early morning cold to pay their respects to a woman they'd never met but who had touched their community in a profound way. They shared breakfast, told stories, and transformed Eleanor's quiet mountain road into a celebration of human connection. As the last of the visitors prepared to leave, Marcus approached Eleanor one final time. "You saved our lives last night, but I think you did something more important than that. You reminded us that kindness still exists in this world." Eleanor stood in her doorway long after the last motorcycle had disappeared down the mountain, the rumble of their engines fading into memory. In her hands, she held dozens of cards and letters, each one a testament to the ripple effect of a simple act of kindness. Her small cabin felt different now, not empty, but full of possibility. The old saying was true: cast your bread upon the waters, and it will return to you tenfold. Eleanor had opened her door to 15 strangers in a storm, and in return, she had discovered that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the choice to see the humanity in others, even when the world tells you to look away. As she prepared to go inside, Eleanor smiled and whispered to the mountain wind, "Thank you, Henry. You were right about bikers after all."